Hello, everyone. People said they would watch me read my book and drink caffeine, but I don't have any caffeine, so I'm drinking this questionably colored pineapple-pomegranate juice. It tastes just fine. I'm going to be reading Stare at the Sea. It is my shortest book, and that's why. Please do not be offended by any of my accents that might go wrong. I try really hard. Also, if you hear a rooster crowing, I don't know what his problem is. He just crows all the time. Chapter 1. A Good Start. The train rumbled down the track. Fog shrouded the scenery on the other side of the window as it rushed past in a blur of gray and green. The sound of the tracks slipping steadily under the wheels vibrated in the air. A lone passenger sat with their eyes closed and forehead pressed against the window. "How do you spell your name?" A memory tugged on the young woman's thoughts, begging for attention. She could see her second-grade teacher at the blackboard, a crease in her forehead as she tried, and failed, several times to pronounce her name correctly. The little girl in the memory tried to hide her flaming red cheeks, embarrassed and on the verge of tears. "It's okay, I just want to say it right." Mrs. Johnson waved the chalk in her direction again. "Do you know how to spell it?" Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. Leave my phone on silent. "Won't happen again." "Do you know how to spell it?" The little girl dragged her feet as she walked slowly from her seat to the large dusty blackboard. She could hear every cough and whisper of her classmates behind her. They would make fun of her, she knew. Everyone did. They had already started when the teacher called her Eva 3 times in a row, and she shook her head no at each attempt. Maybe she should have just pretended. "Go ahead, dear." Chalk in hand, the little girl pressed it uncertainly against the smooth surface. It was deafeningly loud in her ears as she pressed the white stick against the black wall. Slowly the letters lined up in a row, a shaky assembly of 4 vowels and 1 consonant. A-O-I-F-E. "How do you say your name?" asked Mrs. Johnson. "Aoife," the girl whispered. The teacher smiled at her and gave the name on the board a second glance, a furrow of consternation growing between her eyebrows. Little Aoife's eyes darted down to her feet. Her new school shoes looked unfamiliar and strange on the wooden floor. She'd asked for the blue ones, but the purple ones with the cats on them had been on sale. They were just as good, she had been told. "I think that's a beautiful name," said Mrs. Johnson. "Do you know where your name comes from?" Of course she did. Her mom had named her after her grandma, a woman the young child would never meet. The stories she was told about her late grandmother were exciting and grand, but Aoife never felt grand or exciting in moments like these. She felt small, embarrassed, stupid. "It's not you who's stupid, Aoife," said her father with a pipe between his teeth. "It's them for being so narrow-minded and thinking that everybody should have an American name." She never corrected him to tell him that there were 2 Juans, 1 Amina, and even a boy named Ishmael in her class. It was just that all those names were spelled the way they sounded, and hers was not. When they were all lined up alphabetically, people would snicker as she stood with the A's. Aoife opened her eyes and stared out of the train window. Her hands lay motionless in her lap, her palms slanted upwards towards the ceiling, and her fingers curved gracefully. It was a habit that accompanied her everywhere. The window reflected her weary face back to her, showing her the way exhaustion had painted its dark circles under her gray-blue eyes. Her mother had always said her eyes were the same color as the sea on a cloudy day. "How do you say your name?" Once again the question echoed through her mind, and Aoife shifted in her seat. Maybe in the UK people would find her name a bit more common. She knew her name was Irish, but surely the close proximity of England to Ireland would make it easier? If not, she could always say her name was Eva and forget the whole name thing entirely. She didn't want to, though. Her name was her only connection to her mother these days. Not saying that's important, but that's kind of important. The man sitting a few rows ahead of Aoife drummed his fingers loudly against the surface of his shiny black briefcase. She licked her chapped lips and kept herself from sighing loudly. For the last 24 hours she had been surrounded by people and noise, engines and wheels, but she was almost to her destination, almost to a place where she could stand still and just breathe. Her hand smoothed the frizzy braid that hung over her shoulder before she leaned back against the seat. Her eyes slipped shut and she dozed off. The feeling of falling woke Aoife with a gasp. She caught herself from tumbling out of her seat as the train pulled to a stop. Her brain was clouded as she struggled to remember where she was and where she was going. She saw the station roll. She saw the station roll into view through the window and saw the sign for Brighton. Then she remembered. The wheels shuddered to a stop and the doors opened, letting off the crowds of people. Aoife blinked her sleepy eyes before she grabbed her worn-out suitcase. She kept her backpack on one shoulder with one hand while she pulled her suitcase with the other. Her feet hit the platform and she paused, only for a second, before a man behind her shouted and a woman babbling into her cell phone brushed past her on the left. Aoife didn't have a chance to find her bearings before she was pushed along with the crowd. 3 teenage girls paused in front of her to take a selfie. Aoife rolled her eyes before she walked around them. Exiting the train station put Aoife in the full strength of the sun. Its rays picked up the golden highlights of her hair and made the dirty blonde color almost glow. She squinted up at the cloudless blue expanse above her, wishing she had her sunglasses on top of her head instead of in her backpack. Someone stepped on her foot. She stumbled back, knocking into a trash can that was just out of sight to her left. Irritation bubbled up inside of her. Why couldn't people just watch where they were going? She looked down to find a smear of white dust on her black leggings. She hugged her cream-colored sweater around her more tightly and struggled to maintain her balance. Brighton wasn't a big city, but it was a popular destination. Like the people in New York were any better than this, Aoife said to herself, as she narrowly missed being smashed into by a group of rowdy young men coming into town for a party. Probably. All she wanted was a cold glass of water and to lie down on a bed, any bed, and sleep for hours. She took a deep breath to calm herself, and there it was, the smell of the sea. She could smell the salt and the fresh breeze. Her heart pounded happily in her chest. She was so close. She felt her mouth turning up into a smile as everything around her disappeared except for the smell. She pictured it in her mind, big and wild and glistening in the sun, there to remind her that she was going to be okay. Whoops, watch out! A young woman with chewing gum between her teeth startled Aoife from her thoughts, and when she tripped over Aoife's suitcase. Let me read that again. A young woman with chewing gum between her teeth startled Aoife from her thoughts when she tripped over Aoife's suitcase. The stranger looked to be about Aoife's age, and her accent proved her to be a local of Great Britain. Sorry? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Aoife bent over to move her case closer to her feet. I shouldn't have left it in the middle of everything. You're not from around here? The girl sounded surprised. You here for holiday? No, Aoife cleared her throat. I'm moving here. That's cool. The stranger studied her face, intrigued. Actually, do you know where this is? Aoife reached into the pocket of her sweater and pulled out the piece of paper that had been touched, smoothed, and stared at over 100 times in the past 3 days. I was told it was easy to find. Yeah, right down near my mom's, little place near the beach. We can share taxi if you'd like. Sure. Aoife swallowed hard and gratefully took the paper back into her hand. She had the address memorized, just in case. But it felt like her ticket into her new life. Like if she lost it, she would be denied access into everything she was desperately hoping for. I'm Hattie, by the way. She held out her hand with another smile. Aoife. Hattie's hand was smooth in her own. She had kind eyes and a faint smell of roses and cigarettes on her Nirvana t-shirt. Irish name, Hattie's grin grew. Welcome, Aoife. You'll love Brighton. Thank you. Aoife breathed easily. Her first introduction was more than she could have ever hoped for. Hattie chatted amiably as they made the 20-minute drive through traffic to the neighborhood where Aoife's new apartment was waiting for her. Hattie offered to help her up to the place, but Aoife declined. All she had was her suitcase and her backpack, nothing she hadn't been able to handle in the 24 hours since she started her travels. "Thanks for sharing a ride with me." Aoife smiled before shutting the door of the taxi and stepping back from the vehicle. She waved until they turned the corner and she was left standing on the sidewalk. The glint of determination in her eye, the girl gathered her bags and walked up to the building. It was maybe 4 or 5 stories tall, each level with windows facing the sea. Aoife paused to listen. The waves on the rocky beach were like music to her ears. She wanted to drop everything and dance along to the rhythm. She didn't, though. Not yet. Donna Brixton was the landlady, and she smiled widely at Aoife when she answered the buzz at the door. She ushered her all the way up to the top floor where the air was musty and he crowded against you like an overbearing instructor. Aoife waited for Donna to unlock the door and let them into the one-roomed flat that had a window facing the beach. That window was all Aoife cared about. She left her bags by the bed and walked to see the full view. There was the sea. Her heart pounded inside her chest and she smiled softly, her fingertips reaching for the window to brush against the glass. The waves crashed over a patch of beach and Aoife could almost feel the salty spray against her face. "Strictly forbidden, or the entire building will be at risk of catching a fire." Donna's voice finally broke through to Aoife. The girl looked over her shoulder and saw the landlady staring at her expectantly. She hadn't even realized Miss Brixton was speaking. "Is everything all right? You fancy the view?" "Oh, yes, very much." Aoife turned then. "It's perfect." "Well, like I said, that corner of the roof leaks, and the chair there can't hold more than someone your size, and we're not sure if the new pipe under the sink leaks or not, but at least you'll be warm in the summer, and you'll have the sea." "Thank you, Miss Brixton." "Just give me a ring if you need anything. My number's down on the table." The door shut behind Donna, and Aoife finally looked around. It wasn't much. In fact, besides the bed against the far wall and the little table and chairs by the corner kitchenette, there was nothing else in the room. The floors were wooden and dusty. Aoife spotted a door near the bed, and she assumed it was either a closet or the bathroom. Maybe both. She thought she realized there were no other doors. Aoife didn't have a lot of clothes, but she would need a dresser of some sort to put her things. She opened the door and saw a toilet, a sink, and a shower head without a curtain around it. At least there was a drain, as long as that worked. Wouldn't be too bad. She would have to keep her toilet paper someplace else while she was showering, though. Side note, the bathroom that I currently have in my apartment right now is exactly like that. And that's kind of funny because I wrote this almost a whole year before I moved here. But I also have no shower curtain, and I have to move my toilet paper when I shower. Okay, end side note. There was a beat from Aoife's pocket. She pulled out her phone in time to see the screen go black. It had lasted her entire trip. It deserved a break after all the traveling. She tossed it lightly onto the bed and noticed the patchwork quilt and white sheets that made it up. There's only one pillow on the double bed. It was fine, though. She only needed one. Aoife hesitated before slipping off her shoes. This was her home now, but she still felt like she was in a strange place that required her to maintain her appearance. She shook her head at herself and left her shoes by the end of the bed. She could hear her feet as they brushed against the floor while she made her way over to the kitchenette at the corner. The faucet squeaked as she struggled to turn on the tap. She let it run for 30 seconds, but there was still no hot water when she gave up and twisted it off. The fridge was empty, just like her stomach. Well, this is it. This is my new home. Aoife turned in a complete circle. That was when she saw it, a rusty old bicycle leaning against the wall behind the door. She hoped it was in good enough condition to get her to and from the shops and her job. That was when Aoife let herself entertain the idea of what her job as a caretaker of an elderly woman would look like. She didn't know Bonnie Wilcox, but she knew Jenny Wilcox. That was how she had this apartment. The bicycle, the job, everything was because of Jenny. "It will be a good start for you, Eve," Jenny had said with conviction when Aoife had mumbled and shrugged. Good start. Aoife went back to her window and let the words roll around in her mind. They sounded good. They felt good. The sea met the blue of the sky and stretched on forever, and as Aoife stared, her eyes growing tired and her body beginning to feel weighed down. She needed sleep. She needed food and a shower and furniture in her new home, but sleep won. She turned and tripped over her shoes at the end of the bed before falling on top of the covers. She forced herself to stand up and pull the covers back before allowing herself to drift off. Slipping her sweater from her shoulders, she draped it over the back of the rickety chair in the middle of the room. She pulled the hair tie from the end of her braid and combed her fingers through, letting her hair fall down around her face. A good start, she thought one more time, and she slid under the covers and pulled the pillow down to reach her head. This is a good start. The moon was high in the sky when Aoife woke up thirsty and hungry. She rubbed at her eyes, flopping onto her back and hearing the bed frame squeak with her weight. It took a minute before she could remember where she was and what had happened. She stretched her arms over her head and pointed her toes as she yawned, her mouth opening as wide as it could. She exhaled deeply, still tired and groggy, but too uncomfortable to fall back asleep instantly. Maybe she should get up and get a drink. Her hands patted the bed for her phone before she remembered that it had died. There was no way to tell time apart from the moonlight reflecting on the sea. Everything was quiet. She could hear the faint crashing of water against the rocks through the window. Aoife focused on the sound and let her breathing slow again. The heaviness of her eyelids pulled them down until she was sleeping once more. The sky was bright. I was seeing how long the chapter was. I lost my spot. The sky was bright and blue when Aoife next opened her eyes. Her body was telling her it was still time to sleep, but there was nothing between her and the sun except a single pane of glass. Hunger drove her from her bed, and she placed her feet on the floor. The first thing she did was find her phone charger and plug it into the wall with an outlet adapter, because she's in England now. The screen was still black when she decided to finish getting ready for the day. After a slow shower and digging through a suitcase for something to wear, she put her sunglasses on and stared at the bicycle in the corner. Aoife knew how funny it would look to anyone who saw her struggling down the stairs with the bike. The strap of her purse crossed over her chest. She wasn't considered tall, barely even reaching the average height of 5 feet 5 inches, but her body was filled with muscles and strength built from years and years of dancing. 2 decades, really. Still, she was relieved when she saw the last flight of stairs and knew she was almost to the bottom. With her phone in her hand, chirping out directions to a nearby grocery store, Aoife settled herself on the seat and put her feet on the pedals. For a second, she thought maybe it wouldn't work, but the chain groaned into action and the wheels began to turn. A good start, Aoife smiled as she rode down the street. There were people walking down the sidewalk, cars driving past, windows open to let out the murmur of television and radio talk shows. Little by little, the sound of the sea was swallowed up, and Aoife had to continue away from the beach. The sun was beating against her shoulders through her white long-sleeved shirt, drying her ponytail and warming her through her skin until she was sweating. She parked her bike with cheeks red from exertion. It wasn't until that moment that she realized she didn't have a bike lock. Oh well, not like anyone would want to steal a rusted-out old bike anyways. And she was right. For 2 days, Aoife traveled the streets of Brighton, leaving her bike outside of stores, cafes, and shopping centers. Every time, it was right where she had left it. Her fridge filled up. You know what? I'm realizing I never gave the bike a name, which is something that I would do with my own bike. And now I'm kind of sad. So maybe by the end of the book, I'll have a name for the bike. And I'll write a sequel about the bike. I don't know. Leave me a comment to say whether you support this decision or not. Her fridge filled up and her body's clock made the switch to the new time zone, helping her feel more at home. The only thing left to do to settle in was to find something to hold her clothes. As it was, she had spread them across the tiny table in the middle of the apartment, stringing her hanging clothes along the empty curtain rod. It wasn't a good solution, as the sunlight would fade the colors if she kept them there for long. She stood by the window and stared at the sea as she ate a strawberry jam sandwich. The window was open and she could hear the sound of the water mixed with the noise of traffic and seagulls. Her eyes followed the motion of the waves as she chewed and savored the taste of sweetness against her tongue. It was better than her breakfast of scrambled eggs without any salt or pepper from that morning. That reminded her. Eva finished her sandwich and left her apartment, locking it behind her. Because locking your apartment is more important than locking your bike. Just in case any of you were wondering. So far, skipped a line. Miss Brixton said she could keep her bike at the bottom of the stairs as long as the other tenants didn't complain. So far, no one had said anything about it. Or anything, actually. She saw one family go into the third-level apartment, but they were too busy to notice her and introduce themselves. The two sisters on the first level were old and apparently deaf, as Eva had practically shouted hello to them when they were on the stairs the first morning, and neither of them turned around to acknowledge her greeting. There was a shop up the street Eva had noticed the day before, and she decided to just walk. That way, if she did buy something, she wouldn't have to balance it on the handlebars. The cute little store was called Pop's Shop, and based on what she could see through the window, Eva assumed it sold furniture and knickknacks. Perhaps they would have something she could use as a dresser or a closet. The bell tinkled over her head when she pushed the door open and stepped inside. It was cool in there, the air conditioning still blasting into the establishment despite the fact that summer was practically over. There was a man with the longest arms and legs Eva had ever seen perched on the edge of the counter. His head was bent over a newspaper, his eyes quickly scanning a row of words before he flicked the page over. He glanced up at the sound of the bell and flashed Eva a tired smile. "Welcome, hey?" His thick accent made Eva smile. "Thanks." Actually, I feel like she wouldn't say it like that. "Thanks." "Thanks." "Thanks," said Eva in return. "Thanks." "Thanks." Yeah, that one. "Thanks," said Eva in return, crossing her arms across her chest to keep herself from touching anything that could break. That is a very good rule if you go into a store with things that could break. Cross your arms and keep your elbows in. Elbows are dangerous. I've hurt people with my elbows before. It's not easy, but it happens. Just as Eva had suspected, Pop's shop was filled with knickknacks and odd bits of furniture. She saw cupboards, bedside tables, ceramics, antique silverware sets, and cushions. Quilts lined one whole wall, and Eva eyed them with interest. She wasn't sure how long she would last during a winter by the sea with only one quilt on her bed. "Hello!" A cheery voice called out from behind her. "Hi!" Eva turned to see a young woman about her age come out of the back room. A huge smile on her face that made her blue eyes dance and sparkle. "Just looking." "What you looking for? We just got in a load of the most cozy cushions ever." The girl led Eva back to a corner she hadn't reached yet. "They're so soft. Here, try one. Aren't they the most cozy thing you've ever felt in your entire life?" Her enthusiasm was contagious, and Eva rubbed the cushion. The girl wasn't lying. It was soft and inviting. "I have about 3 of them back at mine now. I just keep buying them because they're just so cozy." The high glittering laugh that came from the young woman's mouth as she spoke. A high glittering laugh came from the woman's mouth as she spoke. "We have some in green in the back if you want that color." "Oh, thank you." Eva smiled and handed the cushion back to the shop lady. Sorry, everybody's liking my tweets. I'm not here for pillows or cushions, though, unless you can store your clothes in them. Wouldn't that be a great invention? Again, the laughter rang out and brightened the entire store. But no, these ones are only good for cozying up with on the sofa or in bed. Maybe after I have the rest of my apartment furnished, I'll buy one. Yeah, I'll set a couple aside for you. Oh, no, you... Eva was about to tell the woman she didn't need to when the tall man from the counter appeared in view. "Sarah, are you trying to sell more cushions? Leave the poor people alone." The exasperated tone in his voice was cushioned with fondness as he shook his head. Apparently, Eva wasn't the only person to fall prey to Sarah's sales tactics. "But everyone needs cozy cushions, Martin. Even you have them at your house. You love them." Sarah protested as she picked out one blue cushion and one cream-colored one and tucked them under her arms. "I do love them, but not everyone who comes in here is here to buy cushions. Only because they've not seen them yet. I'm determined to get at least one into every single home here before Christmas." Sarah's smile was still warming the entire shop as she disappeared into the back with the 2 cushions that Eva could only imagine were for her. "Sorry about that," apologized Martin. "When she gets obsessed with something, that's all she can think about. They are very cozy." Eva felt like she hadn't properly spoken to people in days. Poor girl. "I'm Martin, by the way." The young man held out his hand, his long fingers gripping Eva's firmly as they greeted one another. "Eva." There was a curl of nervousness in her stomach as she said her name. "Oh, it's a lovely name." The green in Martin's eyes lit up. "I've always loved that name." "What name?" asked Sarah, emerging from the back, her eyes wide at the thought of having missed anything. "Eva. This is Eva." Martin let go of Eva's hand as he pointed at his co-worker. "And this is Sarah. It's very nice to meet you both." Warmth spread across Eva's chest as she took in the friendly faces of the 2 strangers in front of her. "Yeah, same." Sarah's smile burst forth. "Now, you were saying you needed something for your clothes." "Like a wardrobe?" asked Martin, his eyes roaming around the store. "I'm going to try to make like a higher pitched voice for Sarah and a lower pitched voice for Martin, but I am only a girl, so if it's not very good, then I'm sorry." It was comical to see Sarah standing next to him, the top of her head not even reaching his shoulder because of the height difference. Eva tried to see if there's a family resemblance, but beyond the happy expressions on their faces and their dark chocolate-colored hair, their features didn't match. They led her back to the front of the store and stood in front of a handsome piece of furniture she could barely keep herself from reaching out to touch. "Isn't it beautiful?" asked Sarah, her tone quiet, but smile still in place. It's gorgeous." Sorry, I almost made Eva English. "It's gorgeous." Eva glanced at the price tag and swallowed. "I don't think I can afford it, though." That is relatable. We have a smaller one right over here. Martin led the way again, not even batting an eyelash. The smaller one was what Eva needed, but the price was still more than she knew she could spend. Her job as a caregiver didn't start for another 3 days, and most of her pay from that was going to her rent. The leftover was supposed to cover food and other amenities she would need. Her savings were low from buying the plane ticket just days before she flew out of the country, and if she didn't take care, she could quickly run out. It was because of those reasons that Eva frowned and stepped back. "I will have to think about it." "Yeah, of course, love," said Martin easily. Sorry, that was kind of high-pitched. "Yeah, of course, love," said Martin easily. "Just pop round whenever you've decided. I'm here every day, and Sarah's here most days, unless Max convinces her to take the day off." Eva quirked her eyebrows at the last comment. A smile pulled up her frown. Sarah blushed and shook her head at Martin, a teasing look in her eye. "Don't listen to anything he says. I've only done that twice." "Ah, but you have done it!" Martin stepped away quickly to keep Sarah out of reach, smacking his shoulder. Besides Donna and Hattie, these 2 shopworkers were the first people Eva had really met here in Brighton. She wanted to stay and just chat with them, but that would have been creepy. Right? Creepy? Eva shook away her thoughts when Sarah laughed again. "Thanks for everything," said Eva as she adjusted her purse and took a step towards the door. "I'll have to stop back sometime." "Please do," Sarah nodded. "Even if you just want to have a chin wag sometime, I'm always up for a chat." "Sarah," Martin sighed, "you can't just tell people that." "I will," said Eva, looking Sarah in the eye. There were a lot of thoughts going around Eva's head as she went a few streets further to buy salt and pepper from the grocery store. She smiled as she thought about Sarah's warm, friendly manner, her dark curls, her slight frame and pretty features, Martin's long legs, easygoing personality, exasperated fondness for his friends, and calming voice went through her memory. It had only taken her 2 days to find herself a couple of friends. "All you have to do is meet one," her father had always said, "then they'll introduce you to their friends." Eva wasn't holding her breath that they would invite her into their inner circle, but she was happy enough with the thought that 2 people knew her name and wanted her to come back and see them. It was a thought that made her smile for the rest of the weekend and even on Monday morning when she woke up for her first day at work. I'm going to end there because this video is now half an hour long. I hope you enjoyed reading with Bailey and her pomegranate pineapple juice.